Arizona is known for its desert landscapes and canyons. In June 2008, however, the US state became the scene of a murder. In Mesa, a man is found dead in his apartment by his roommates. He was the victim of a gruesome attack. His throat was slit, he had 27 stab wounds all over his body, and he was also shot in the face. The victim is Travis Victor Alexander. He was born in Riverside, California in 1977. After his father died, he and his siblings were taken in by their paternal grandmother, who eventually brought them into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who are more commonly known as Mormons, and for the rest of the video I'll just call them Mormons because that's shorter. Alexander was employed at a marketing company, and he also worked as a motivational speaker. He met Jodi Ann Arias in September 2006 at a conference in Las Vegas, and the two hit it off. However, Alexander wanted Arias to read the Book of Mormon. He then baptized her on November 26, 2006. And only after that, from February 2nd, 2007 onwards, they were officially a couple, but separated only 4 months later after Arias read messages from another woman on Alexander's cell phone, which led to an argument. Just a month later, in July 2007, Alexander is dating another woman, but Arias is jealous. In December, she slashes his tires twice, writes threatening emails to his new girlfriend, and hacks his Facebook account. And at that time, Alexander also tells his friends that Arias had once sneaked into his house through the doggy door while he was sleeping. That's creepy. Arias finally returns to California in March 2008. However, the two remain in contact, despite everything that had happened. But now, only 2 months later, Alexander lies dead in his shower, and this could not have been the result of a suicide attempt. On the very day his friends informed the police about the discovery of his body, they mentioned the name of his ex-girlfriend, Jodi Arias.
What's going on?
A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while. We think he's dead. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood. I didn't go in, but I can give you the phone to someone who went in there.
Yes, please, can you?
Hello.
Hi, so what's going on?
He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
Okay. How did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
She said that there was blood. So is it coming from his head? Did he cut his head?
It's all over the place.
Hold on just a moment. Okay. You're a good friend of Travis's, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has he been depressed at all? Thinking about committing suicide? Anything like that?
I don't think he's been thinking he committed suicide. He's been really depressed because he broke up with this girl, and he was all upset about that. But I don't think he would actually kill himself over that.
Has he been threatened by anyone recently?
Yes, he has. Okay. He has an ex-girlfriend that's been bothering him and following him and slashing tires and things like that.
And do you know the ex-girlfriend's name?
Do you remember it? Yeah. What's his ex-girlfriend's name? Ask Taylor.
And do you know if he's ever reported it to the police?
Her name is Jodi. I don't know if he's ever reported. Hold on.
Jodi Ann Arias was born in Salinas, California in 1980. Even as a child, she loved photography and later made it her profession. However, she also says about her childhood that she was often beaten by her parents. When Arias is now questioned by the police regarding the death of her ex-boyfriend, she states that it could not have been her, as she was on a road trip at the time of the murder. She had last seen Alexander in April 2008, 2 months before his death. But at the crime scene, a different picture emerges. Investigators find a bloody palm print there that matches Arias' fingerprints. Also, a .25 caliber cartridge is found near the bathroom sink. Alexander's digital camera is found in the downstairs washing machine. Although the images have been deleted, the police are able to recover the photos. These show Arias and Alexander both in sexually suggestive poses at approximately 1:40 p.m. on June 4, 2008, the day Alexander died. The last photo, showing Alexander alive and in the shower, was taken at 5:29 p.m. on June 4th. Moments later, images of a person lying on the floor, bleeding profusely, appear. Thus, Arias becomes the only suspect. On July 15, 2008, she is arrested on suspicion of first-degree murder. And now she changes her story. And spoiler alert, this will not be the only time she changes something in her story. She now says that she was indeed in Alexander's apartment, however, the two are victims of masked burglars. If that were true, why didn't she call the police immediately after the attack? So, Arias didn't get far with her story. So guess what she does now? She changes the story again. She now tells the police that Alexander attacked her and admits that she killed him in self-defense. She says she had been a victim of domestic violence. And then, on December 10, 2012, her trial begins. And it should be a tough one. Arias testifies in court for a full 18 days, describing the details of her relationship with Alexander. She tries to explain why she changed her story several times during the investigation. Apparently, she had been in some kind of trauma, and any memory of the events from the day she killed Alexander were shrouded in a kind of fog. Her defense attorney pleads self-defense, but if it was only self-defense, why would she stab Alexander 27 times, shoot him in the head, and then slit his throat? So the jury doubts the theory of self-defense and assumes a planned murder. Based on evidence, they reconstruct what happened as follows. In early 2008, Alexander tells his friends that Arias would accompany him on a business trip to Cancun, Mexico, scheduled for June 15. But a few months later, he asked to replace his travel companion with another female friend. And that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Because from now on, Arias plans her revenge. On May 28, 2008, the house of Arias' grandparents in Wairika, California is broken into. A .25 caliber pistol and other items are taken. The grandparents' gun is never found. Well, at least not in California. On June 2, 2008, Arias rents a white Ford Focus in Redding, California, about 100 miles south of where she lives. She then calls a friend and asks him to loan her 2 gas cans. Receipts also show that she buys a 3rd gas can on June 3, 2008. That same evening, at another gas station, she purchases 8 gallons of gas with her credit card, and just 4 minutes later, another 9 gallons of gas with cash. Quite a lot of gasoline, one would think. I wonder what she needs it for. She's not planning on driving to Arizona, is she? On June 4th, she rings Alexander's doorbell. They have sex, as evidenced by the photos on Alexander's digital camera, and later she shoots him in the head, stabs him about 27 times with a knife, and finally cuts his throat. She then drives back to California, and on June 7th she returns the rental car, and the employees at the car rental agency are quite surprised, because Arias had told them she would only drive the car locally, but now they see that she had driven around 2,800 miles. Perhaps she meant local in Siberian terms? Also, all the floor mats are missing, and there are red stains on the front and back seats. The car is subsequently cleaned before the police can examine it. Arias then drives to Utah to meet friends. They notice that her hands are bandaged and she is wearing sweaters with long sleeves, which is unnatural for the time of year. Well, how warm does it get in Utah in June? I'll have to do some research on that. Let's see. Okay. Arias does, however, have a story that supposedly explains how she got the cuts on her hands. She says she had cut herself while working in a restaurant called Margaritaville. But unfortunately for her, such a restaurant neither exists nor has ever existed in the area. Now, one might think that the evidence against her is already sheer overwhelming, but Arias still pleads self-defense. Prosecutors now argue that the .25 caliber cartridge found near Alexander's body must have come from the same gun stolen during the burglary of Arias' grandparents' home. Thus, it is suspected that Arias had staged the burglary and used the gun to kill Alexander. All of this suggests that Arias planned her crime, and therefore the death penalty is on the table. This, however, is opposed by some psychologists, who then come forward and say that Arias was probably suffering from acute stress at the time of the murder, which sent her body into a fight-or-flight response to defend herself, and thus block out any thoughts of consequences. They also speculate she could have borderline personality disorder. So in May 2013, the jury cannot agree on the death penalty, giving the trial a mistrial status. The retrial, about a year later with a new jury, also fails to agree on the death penalty. It comes to a mistrial again. Now, prosecutors can only seek the death penalty twice, so after the second mistrial, the death penalty isn't any option any longer. Arias is thus found guilty of first-degree murder on May 8, 2015, after 15 hours of deliberation, and she is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which she is currently serving at the Arizona State Prison Complex, Perryville, in Goodyear. So this is where jealousy can lead to. Do you think the death penalty would have been appropriate in her case? Or is it actually a worse punishment for her to be locked in a prison cell for the rest of her life? Stay safe, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.